podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. Thank you for joining me. I'm so glad you guys listen. If you get a chance to share this, if it resonates with you and or it might resonate with somebody else, please share my podcast, pass it along. If you watch this on my YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. Very, very simple. I'm not going to tell you how to get a hold of me. You already know. You can always go to social media and get a hold of me. So this podcast is going to be much more positive than last week's podcast. I think I said last week at the beginning that I didn't like doing those type of podcasts because they're very I don't like negativity. I just don't like it in my mind. I don't just like it in general. But with this job search that I'm going through, and there was a lot of negativity that came out of it. And in my own mind, a lot of times, it's not even really happening. Sometimes it's just in my own mind. And you have to take the good with the bad, right? You have to have some bad to know when you're doing well. So today's podcast, I'm posing a question to all of you. And that question is, what if? And I did a talk when I was at the chamber. I did a talk about this, and it was kind of a business talk about what if you had more revenue in your business, or what if you were making more money, or whatever. Relationships, whatever you want to get involved with. So as I decided to do this talk on my podcast, I started redoing some research. And of course, everything on the internet is true, but in this situation, I was reading things about neuroscience and all kinds of different topics. And oddly enough, I was looking for the positives, right? What if something positive happened? And I got a lot of the negativity. Well, I mean, that's always the case. And anytime you're manifesting something, or you're trying to, change an outcome of something that hasn't happened yet, you need to approach it with a positive attitude or a negative attitude. Sometimes people go to negative, like, what if, it rains on the day I planned a birthday party for my child or something? And not that you can make it rain or not, but it starts to affect the neurons in your brain and kind of rearrange some things. So when I found a positive piece of this, we were talking about how serotonin is starting to develop in your mind when you're starting to have these positive things, and your mind starts to go towards things of how to succeed in these different areas. And that could be, what if my relationship was stronger? If I had more money? What if anything, whatever you're going to ask yourself. I was listening to Jack Canfield once. Jack Canfield's, I don't know if he's a motivational speaker, but I used to listen to him quite a bit, and maybe in the 90s, and he's still around. He still comes up on my feed sometimes when I listen to him. And he's big into how, what you're developing in your mind. And I remember him bringing up once that if you were going to go to the dentist, when we were younger, when I was younger, going to the dentist was horrible. They just weren't as good as they are now. I don't mind going now, because they're so good at what they do. It's usually painless. And if there is any pain, it's slight. But back in the day, it was really when I used to have to get my teeth cleaned on a regular basis, and I had really bad teeth. As you know, I don't have any teeth anymore. These are all fake. They look good, though. They're expensive. Um, I would dread going to the dentist when I made that appointment. When I got my teeth cleaned, I used to call it Helga's House of Pain, because it was so uncomfortable for however long, they were doing it. And he was talking about, so you have a dentist appointment on Friday, and you have all this anxiety about this appointment. And you go on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. As it gets closer, your anxiety level's coming up. It's starting to affect the way you're thinking. It's starting to affect the way you do your job. It's starting affecting the way you treat people or interact with people. And you get to Friday and you get a call very early in the morning, and they tell you that the dentist had an emergency and your appointment's canceled. So for 4 days of that week, you pretty much ruined everything that was positive because you had so much anxiety about this dentist appointment. And on the negative side of things, when I was just reading prior to this coming on this podcast, I was reading some things, and it was talking about how dangerous it is to ask what if you're asking the wrong questions. And it didn't bring that up. It was just about negativity from this neuroscience scientist that was I was looking at or reading about, and it's what if the relationship doesn't work out? What if my car breaks, or what if this or that happens? And yes, when you start thinking negative like that, uh, you start to manifest thoughts, and things start to go bad. During this job search, that was happening to me. I was starting to get a lot of anxiety because money and not having a job, and this is coming up and that's coming up. And as I'm going through this, I can feel myself starting to sit different, walk different, talk different, interact less at places that when I usually go, I'm very interactive in a positive way, telling jokes or whatever, smiling a lot. But but conversely, if you're asking yourself, what if I had more money? Let's just use that as an example. I had asked somebody once, somebody that worked for me, a friend of mine, how much is a lot of money to you? And she thought for a second. She goes, $1 million. That's a lot of money. And to me, $1 million is not a lot of money. Would I like to have $1 million right now? Of course. Would it solve every problem in my life? It would solve a lot. Would it solve problems 5 years down the road? Probably not. $1 million you could spend these days in literally minutes. And she asked me, well, what is your number? I said $100 million. That's a lot of money to me. $100 million, I'd never need any more money in my life. I could manage that. I could have nice things. I could live nicely. I could travel. I could do a lot of things. So it's all kind of up to you and what you're thinking. But nevertheless, I asked her, what if you had that $1 million? What would you do? Oh my God! Now her wheels start turning. Right now she's coming up with all these positive things. Oh, I could do this. I could get my kids this. I could buy a new car. I wouldn't have any payments. I could keep my job, but I wouldn't have to worry about money. And you could see the change in her personality. And I could feel it when I start asking the right questions. I always go to this way to manifest good things, and that's to get that pad of paper out and start writing down, and I put at the top at what if, and then I start writing notes. What if I had $100 million? What if I had that super awesome job that kept me busy, that kept me engaged, that I could succeed highly in? And when I start asking myself those questions, my mind starts working towards answers. Physiologically, if you ask your mind what if, it will start to change. It will start to release chemicals. It will start to rearrange itself and your mind to get to that point. The key to it is to be consistent, right? Now, I'm no doctor. You all know that. And I listen to this stuff on a regular basis. And sometimes even in the gym, I will listen to speeches, clips of motivational speeches for an hour. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 minute clips. And I'm talking, the other day I listened to these for an hour and 24 minutes was the length of the album. I didn't listen to that whole album, but I listened to motivational speeches the entire time. And it does change the way you think. It changes my workout. It changes what I'm focused on. It changes um, all these things in a positive way. And after last week's podcast, when I put my clips out on social media, I will listen to a clip here and there because they're only like a minute or 2 minutes long. So if you see those on social media, listen to them real quick. It's very quick, 1 minute, 2 minutes. I think it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds is the top that they will last. And I was listening to those clips going, man, Ed, you've got to pull yourself out of this thing. You're actually manifesting bad luck. You're actually bringing on problems that you didn't have prior to this, or focusing on those problems, and it's keeping you down. It's getting very depressed. And I've had this going on for a couple of years, and I'm having to pull myself out, having to make a conscious effort of doing that. And I sit down a lot of times after looking for work, and I'll make notes. And then I go back through those notes and I look at them and I figure out the frame of mind I was in when I was writing that note down. And it does change. It changes my next thought. Look, we're our worst enemy. We all know that, but we could be our best advocate too. We constantly think of things that could happen that never have happened, that you don't even know if they're going to happen. And we spend a lot of time worrying about things in the future, and we don't know what the future holds. If we knew that, I wouldn't have a problem because I would have known COVID was coming. Nobody knew COVID was coming. Nobody knew this person was going to pass away or this problem was going to arise. And this is why in my speaking, I'm talking about trauma and getting over these things. We have to be ready if those things come up. Asking yourself, what if I had a better relationship? Your mind will start figuring out things that you can contribute to that relationship. Now, when you're talking about things like relationships, you have other people involved. And if they're not on the same page, and that's that expectations I've talked about many a times, knowing each other's expectations, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So in my mind, I would encourage you to um, do things that is on you, right? Nobody else involved. If you're trying to saying, what if I had that $1 million? And you'd say, well, I'd buy my kids thing. That's not what I'm talking about, because that's doing a service for your child. And so I would encourage you to sit down with that pad of paper and start writing things out. When you write things down, you remember them 20 times more, I think. There's a real number out there, but I'm telling you, if you write things down, you are you're going to remember those things a lot more. They're going to stick in your mind a lot more. Making these to-do lists that are very positive. I'm going to do this on Tuesday. And the key to that is to do the thing on Tuesday. That's the discipline. They talk about KPIs a lot in business and in sales, especially. And I've mentioned this, I think, in either my last podcast or the podcast before. A KPI is a key performance indicator. So what that would be is, let's say you wanted to lose 40 pounds, whatever the number is, and you wanted to do that in 6 months. So you would go on your phone and figure out what 6 months from the day you're thinking about this, and it gives you a date. And at the end of that date, at that target date, you're going to be 40 pounds lighter. That would be a key performance indicator. A DPI, who my friend Steve Haru talks about in his book, is a daily performance indicator. The daily performance indicator would be all the things you have to do each day to get to that KPI, right? Those little miniature goals. Today, I'm going to eat the right foods. I'm not going to eat sugar. I'm not going to drink alcohol. I'm not going to do this, do that. I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow at 9 a.m., whatever the number is. And those are those daily DPIs, right? Those are those little goals I've talked about in the past on several of my podcasts. Those things I talked about on my podcast where you're making these really small goals, right? On Friday, I'm going to do this. 30 seconds, not 2 hours. I'm not going to spend my whole day doing this. I'm going to do one thing that takes me 30 seconds. And maybe that's reading the Bible or reading a book or doing something that's just going to take 30 seconds or a minute. I'm going to, meditate for X amount of time. These are those things. What if I every Friday read a chapter in the Bible or something? When you start doing those things, you're going to start manifesting good things. When you start talking to people positively and coming up with what ifs for each of you and bouncing those off people, you have to have some positive people in your life and bounce those off people that aren't going to criticize you for having this big, hairy, audacious goal at the end, KPI. You're going to have to do these little things. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you not achieving a goal. However, it puts you behind. So if you're going to make those changes for this minute or that minute, you really should concentrate on getting that thing done. This is why I tell you to take these little baby steps, right? This job hunt has changed so much in the last 10 years of how you acquire leads for jobs. I applied for a job yesterday morning, and 2 hours later, I was turned down for the job. So I'm sure nobody saw, what I was. Nobody read my resume. So we have to do things differently, right? We have to reach out to our friends. We have to reach out to other people. We have to let people know that, hey, we're looking for work. We do this, we do that. Maybe you call ex-employers that you had a good relationship with. Maybe you call friends that you know are in a specific business and ask them, hey, do you know anybody? People want to help you. But if they don't know you're struggling, which I don't usually tell people I'm struggling, then I'm not getting a good response back. But when you start to ask yourself those what if questions, and in companies, a lot of times, let me get back to that. You start asking you those what if questions. What if I reached out to 10 people on Monday via email, text, however you want to call them, do whatever. And this goes with anything in your life. If you were deciding you wanted to get a new dog, you would do some research on dogs and you would go and start asking yourself, what if I had this kind of dog? How would that be in my home? How would that be to walk? How would that be to interact with? You do it all the time. You ask yourself, what if all the time? The problem is you're usually asking yourself, what if something goes wrong? And when you're doing that, what are you doing? You're manifesting that bad news. I like to in a company, take the opportunity with a group of people, if there's a good culture in the company, and say, what if we changed the way we did this and we did it this way? How would that affect other people in the company? How would that affect our customers? How would that affect? I got news for you. There's no company in the world that can't improve. They all can get better at what they're doing. But it takes those questions. It takes that culture to ask an owner or a CEO or somebody, hey, Mr. CEO, Mrs. CEO, what if we did it this way? Do you think that might be better? What if a salesperson asked different questions? What if? This, I'm telling you, this is a huge question that you have in your life. And not one of you that are listening to this podcast couldn't improve your life by asking what if on the positive side of things. You know, what if I got that degree? What if I took those extra classes? What if I learned this or got that certification? What if I had that? What would it accomplish? I was talking to my son yesterday, and he's in the IT world. And there's a lot of certifications you can get in the IT world. If you, let's say you don't have a degree, but you've been in IT for a while, and there's all these certifications you're going to get, and they're not horribly hard to get on a regular basis. I don't think. I'm not an IT person. But there's sales certifications that I could get. There's other things that I could, management certifications. They didn't have all this 20 years ago, but they have it now. And of course, it's from a so called expert. But what it does, it gives you credibility in the workplace. Are they, do you have to have a degree? I don't have a degree, and it's killing me right now because of job hunts that you absolutely have to have a bachelor's degree. We did not need that 30, 40 years ago. It was not necessary to get that to get into the positions I was in. Obviously, I got in a lot of good positions and I never had that degree. But when I start reading about why are employers looking like that, it's really just credibility. It's the fact that you did it. Whether it's right or not doesn't matter. The people that are holding the gold that you want to get a piece of are putting this out there. Education. Education has never been a bigger business than it is now. And it's almost like collusion that the companies and the education system and maybe the government too, I don't know, are getting together and saying, look, if you don't have this education, you need to get educated. If you don't get educated, you're not going to be able to get a job, or you're not going to be able to get to a level that you want to get to. And of course, doctors, lawyers, people like that, they have always needed that education. But it's getting down to where I'm getting asked if I have a degree for a job that I could do with my eyes closed, that you could never learn anything about that degree. It's not a specific thing like you know, heart surgery or something like that. And they never ask what, no, I shouldn't say that. They once in a while will ask what the degree is in, but it's usually not related to the job. It's just the fact that degree gives you some credibility. So this isn't going to be a long podcast, and I will put the clips out on social media. I just kind of wanted to get back into this positive groove where I'm pleading with you for the sake of yourself to start asking those what if questions on a positive thing. Like I said, what if I had more money? What if I was in a better relationship? What if I had a better job? What if I had a nicer car? What if I lived in a different area? What if I lived in a different state? You ask yourself those questions on a regular basis, but I want you to be more deliberate about it. I want you to start asking yourself, what if I was 30 pounds lighter? What would that look like? What would I walk like? What would I talk like? How much more would I have my head held up, when you're walking? Because when I'm telling you, you can tell, you can watch people's body language and tell if someone's a little down or they're way up, or, you can't tell specifically what happened to them, but you can tell if it was a positive or negative thing. You ever just say hi to somebody and they're just grumpy as hell, and they're just, you don't know what happened to them 5 minutes before. This is why when we get service that isn't exemplary, I don't stress out too much. I don't know what that person's going through right now. I don't know what kind of situation they're in with their children, their spouse, or their employer. I don't know. Another reason why culture is so important in a company. You have to have a culture where you can go to those, um, high level managers or CEOs or owners and ask them questions and be honest about what's going on. And I know that's not always the case. Sometimes if you go to a manager and you tell them, I don't really like the way this is, they just figure that you're one of those complaining people. And that's shame on them. They should ask a few more questions like, well, how do you think we can fix it? I had a guy one time when I worked at Pepsi that told me, and this is an old saying, he said, instead of telling me why something can't work, tell me how it can work. And that definitely shifted the way I approach things. How could I do this better? And does it make sense? And does it cost more money? Will it save us money? Does it cost more money up front than save in the end? Does it cost less money up front and cost more in the end? It's all these questions. And this podcast isn't about business. It's about you. It's about you and it's about me. I use this podcast unbeknownst to me when I started it. I started to use it as therapy for myself, to talk to you, to talk to myself, to start figuring out who I am. And I know at almost 63 years old, I should know that, but you probably don't know who you are either. Certain things happen in your life that change the way you think. We start getting more cynical. I'm watching this, over the last 10 years with this political environment we're in, where, if you support this person hates you, doesn't know you, just hates you because you support that person. People that will rather burn down a building than to, support somebody. We all know everybody makes mistakes. Nobody thinks alike. We're like DNA, man. We're all different. We get information from different places too. And I've talked about how much information we can get from so many different areas. There's thousands and thousands of news networks out there that are not reporting the same thing, no matter how it happened. So benefit from my therapy that I'm giving myself in this podcast and start asking yourself, what if? What if I was better at something? What if I read a book and I learned about something? I've told you, I'm encouraging you to start learning about AI. AI is not going away. Is it the end of this is the greatest thing in the world? It's pretty cool. Is it always right? No. But it can be very advantageous for you to use it in different aspects of your life. It's kind of like those encyclopedias I talked about. So I'm going to end the podcast. It's a short one, like I said. But I want you to start kind of reflecting. Maybe before you go to bed, spend a couple minutes asking what if and those positive things and rewire your mind. If you rewire your mind in that positive thing and you're asleep for 6 or 8 hours, your mind's going to start working on that answer. Okay. I told you, it's proven fact. Physiologically, if you ask yourself what if, your brain will rewire itself to make you figure out how to get that thing done or how to worry more about it. So, like I said, use the pad of paper, ask yourself what if, have an amazing Memorial Day weekend. The sun's going to be out mostly. And I'll get back here next week and do another podcast. And like I said, we're going to get that trajectory where we're getting more positive again. Start doing whatever I can to maybe help you out. Start giving you, I know you don't really care about my life, but it probably reflects some things that have happened in your life, whether it's looking for a job or it's, just trying to kind of figure out uh, how to manage everything. Life is not easy. We all know that. We all have trauma to deal with. We all have problems. We all have not perfect situations. Would it be great if they were perfect? I don't think it's possible, to be honest with you. We're just humans. So again, thank you for listening to my podcast. It's the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. I should be on every platform out there that you can think of. If I'm not, send me an email at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. And if you have a platform you want me to be on, I'll figure out a way to get on it. They're generally free. I just need to search them out. Have an amazing Memorial Day weekend, and I will talk to all of you very soon.